non-fiction. Somebody notify the press.
The school-to-prison pipeline is a disturbing national trend wherein children are funneled out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. The adoption of zero-tolerance policies criminalize minor infractions of school rules, while cops in schools lead to students being criminalized for behavior that should be handled inside the school. Students of color are especially vulnerable to push-out trends and the discriminatory application of discipline. The zero-tolerance approach to school discipline originated from the Federal Gun-Free Schools Act of 1994, which mandated that schools expel students found with firearms or lose federal funding. As this law has been implemented locally, zero-tolerance policies have varied considerably from district to district, and many districts have frequently extended zero tolerance beyond any federal definition in existence. Over time, zero tolerance has come to refer to school or district-wide policies that mandate predetermined, typically harsh consequences or punishments for a wide degree of rule violation. Most frequently, zero-tolerance policies address drugs, weapons, violence, smoking, and school disruption in efforts to protect all students' safety and maintain a school environment that is conducive to learning.
Schools are more willing to bring law enforcement to handle disciplinary actions. In New Haven, Connecticut, a 10-year-old boy was actually arrested by police for giving another student a wedgie on the school bus. Down in Florida, an 11-year-old student was arrested by police, thrown in jail, and charged with third-degree felony for bringing a plastic butter knife to school. Back in 2010, a 12-year-old girl at a school in Forest Hills, New York, wrote, "I love my friends Abby and Faith," on her desk. The police were called out, and she was marched out of her school in handcuffs in front of all her friends.
Standardized testing leads to unfair disciplinary practices by schools. A 2008 study in Florida found that black students were 2.5 times more likely to be referred to the judicial system. Those studies also found black students more likely than whites to be suspended, expelled, and sentenced to jail time for infractions that take place on school grounds. Harsher discipline has been linked to a higher rate of high school dropouts, who in turn are more likely to become incarcerated. While black students make up just 16% of the nation's population, they account for 45% of juvenile arrests. The data goes on to show that while accounting for just 30% of enrollment in NYC schools, black students accounted for more than 50% of the suspensions. Statistics show suspensions and expulsions are completely lopsided and heavily impact students of color. Because students of color statistically test lower than white students, schools and educational funding is based on standardized test scores. It benefits the schools who adopt policies that push out colored minorities, so their test scores will rise.
Lastly, the juvenile criminal justice system is focused on punishment instead of rehabilitation. Since the 1980s, an increasingly punitive get-tough approach to prison reform, combined with cuts in state and federal budgets, have led to decreases in spending on prison education programs. For example, in 1994, the U.S. Congress passed a law that prohibits inmates from receiving Pell Grants, thereby cutting funds for post-secondary education in prisons. This means that when a student is expelled or suspended and sent into the juvenile court system, they are automatically falling behind in school and unable to catch up because of the lack of education programs.
Locked up, they won't let me out. And I had a long day in court, shit stressed me out. Won't give me a bail, it can't get me out. Now I'm headed to the county, gotta do a bid here. I'm used to living luxurious, I don't wanna live here. The walls is gray, the clothes is orange. The phone